Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. On behalf of Evolve Pune team and His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhuji, I would like to invite all of you to the day 2 of our Gita Essence series, where Prabhuji is going to cover the learnings of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. And the topic of today's session is very, very interesting. The inner awakening. How we can awaken our inner soul. So in yesterday's session, Prabhuji talked about that how there was a setting of the ghastly war of Mahabharat. And in that ghastly war of Mahabharat, this was a great situation of crisis management. In the crisis management scenario, Prabhuji talked about the entire episode through the acronym of doubt. Doubt, where D stand for Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. O was a kind of ominous results which they all were able to see, which leads to further uncertainty in the mind of Arjuna. There was a bewilderment. Arjuna was having that bewilderment in his mind. And then it came to that turning point T. So yesterday, Prabhuji very beautifully talked about the doubt. D-O-U-B-T. And when we looked at the chapter 1, the crisis management, it starts with Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samvitayuyotsava Mamaka Pandavakeshva Kim Kurvat Samvat Sanjaya. So in this Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra, we all are having this kind of situation, the crisis situation. Every time we are in a kind of a Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra, where we have our own doubts. We have our own Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra in our life. We have our own uncertainties. We also have our bewilderment. We don't know how to think about it, how to go ahead about it. And then we are going to have the turning points in our life. Now, as we are going to move towards the inner awakening, before we start, let me do some quick announcement for all of you. So, as all of you are aware that you have to register for Gita Essence series, and Gita Essence series is live on our website. All of you are aware that our website name is Evolve Pune. So I'll just showcase quickly that what do we do and how it's going to be benefited for all of you. Because due to some technical glitches, we are going to take a little more time. So let me take this particular time to go through, take you all through to this particular important announcement, which we were supposed to do later, but now I'll do it at the beginning only. So let me just share my screen. Hare Krishna. I hope my screen is visible. And at the opening of the screen, you can see that we have already announced our online cultural competition, and the competition is going to be live very soon. So this competition is for kids, for adults, where you can showcase your creativity. There are almost 12 competitions where you can showcase your offering to Krishna. Moving ahead, let's talk about our courses. The courses is on Gita Essence. The Gita Essence course, where we have all topics available there. You can showcase, you can see in the ongoing courses. Just now we finished the deal with COVID crisis. We are also going to have a Bhakti Shastri course, the morning meditation, Srimad Bhagavatam. And also this is our Gita Essence current series where you can register. In the current Gita Essence series, Prabhuji is going to cover 18 topics. We request all of you to register here because you'll be able to have access to all PPTs, videos, notes, and also your mentors. These are the topics which Prabhuji are going to cover. Today, Prabhuji is going to talk about the inner awakening. And these are some of the details about the current course and benefits. You will be able to access the all 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita in 18 days. There will be quizzes, you will have your mentors, and you will also get the international certificate. Now, without a much ado, Madan Sundar Prabhuji is already here. So Prabhuji, I request you to take over this session and take us to the journey of chapter 2 or the session to the inner awakening. And please help us how to understand this inner awakening of our own self. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you need to, yes. Prabhuji. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Yes. Yes. Govinda. Can I start now?
Yes, Prabhuji, we all are waiting.
So I'm hopeful that all of you are able to hear my sound as well as see.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So thank you all for joining for this program once again on Sunday evening, and sorry for the glitch. What to do? Yesterday only we speak about crisis management. Today we had to practice deal with crisis. So maybe that's the reason we got this 5 or 10 minutes delay. We sincerely seek for that excuse for this. And I might need 10 minutes extra at the end of the session today to talk about it. I'll offer a prayer and we'll begin our session, hoping that we don't have to face any more crisis through the session now. Things will be smooth. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gau Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna. So once again, we welcome you all for the series of program based on the teachings of Lord Shri Krishna and Bhagavad Gita through the purpose of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So yesterday was our first episode wherein we had discussed about the topic titled as Crisis Management. The situation in the world today is such that people at large are facing through crisis. Some are going through COVID crisis and some are going through the aftermath or after effects of the COVID crisis. There's a heightened or there's an increase in anxiety epidemic, stress, nervousness, and whatnot. So while talking about the crisis, yesterday we discussed about the crisis that occurred 5,000 years ago in the life of Arjuna at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One of the most powerful, the bravest, and the strongest men became fearful, fear-stricken, nervous, full of anxiety at the sight of his relatives standing against him, holding their arms to fight with Pandavas, including him, up to the death. Either they win or they win. Seeing this, he got perplexed. It was not that Arjuna was not aware what he is about to face on the battlefield. That was known to Arjuna from the beginning. Yet he got bewildered. And now Arjuna, at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita in the chapter 1, is faced with a severe crisis in his life. What should he do? The crisis that is about to happen in the outside world in terms of the war, that would definitely lead to the death of millions and millions of men, soldiers, warriors, generals of all kind. Should he engage and be part of that crisis? Or should he walk away from this crisis, the crisis that is about to unfold, walk away from it and go to the forest and leave all his Pandava brothers, all his brothers, Draupadi, everyone else in the Pandavas' camp at crisis? Either way, whatever choice he makes is going to lead to another kind of crisis. So that is what we kind of discussed yesterday about how Arjuna, the battlefield, or the day at the battlefield of Kurukshetra for Arjuna began with a more of an internal crisis where he was bewildered about what he should do. That's how Bhagavad Gita begins, and rest of the Bhagavad Gita is spoken to help dissuade, not dissuade is not the right word, to actually mitigate the crisis that Arjuna is faced with. And ultimately, at the end of the message of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's resolve becomes very clear. He knows what he's supposed to do with the life, and therefore he acts and he engages in the war. So the point that we were raising at the end of the session yesterday, just like Arjuna was faced with crisis, similarly, time and again, we are faced with crisis. Particularly in today's time, we have n number of crises. There's an air pollution crisis. There is a population crisis. There is a rising petrol crisis. There is a COVID crisis. There is a crisis at the border of India, China, India, Pakistan. There's a crisis because of religious fanatics and whatnot. You name it, and there is some other crisis. There's an environmental crisis, humanitarian crisis, food crisis, water crisis, and the list goes on. So the message of Bhagavad Gita is very relevant and is very important for the progressive life of an individual to deal with the crisis. When Krishna spoke to Arjuna, the situation around him did not change, but his understanding, his perception, his response to the situation changed. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita's message transforms our worldviews or perceptions and gives us the strength to accept the reality, deal with the reality, and make the right choices. I do understand some of you, most of you, or maybe none of you. If in case none of you, then it's not a problem. But some of you might be wondering, I am not faced with any crisis right now, so why should I hear the message of Bhagavad Gita? But the matter of fact is, any one of us at any point of time can be faced with an existential crisis. What we do at the time of crisis will determine our future. And what we do at the time of crisis is determined by how we prepare ourselves to face with the inevitable crisis. And the message of Bhagavad Gita is all about preparing us for that inevitable crisis, which is bound to be there in the life of every individual, as it's a rule of the world. So that was an introduction, was a part of yesterday's discussion, episode 1. Now we'll begin our discussion with today's topic that we have. And that is today's title, episode 2, is Inner Awakening. Bhagavad Gita, interestingly, introduces to us to a very profound concept of yoga. What is yoga? It's a process of self-awakening or realization. What is self-awakening or realization? A process by which one can uncover and gain access to supreme grace, which is beyond all material realms, but still can be accessed through the process of bhakti yoga. And once we have access to this divine grace or the supreme grace, person becomes dhira, a sober, a man of steady intelligence, one who is unperturbed, who becomes unperturbed with the changing situation of the world, one who finds inner fulfillment and a sense of joy within himself, and one who becomes a source of hope and source of joy in the lives of others. And such a state of inner awakening, self-realization or self-awakening is possible for each one of us, regardless of our gender, our religious affiliation, either being atheist or non-atheist, means theist, or young, old, whatever situation we are, all of us have that possibility if we understand the science of yoga and take to the practice of bhakti yoga. Once we understand the science of tapping into this divine grace, then naturally we cultivate the qualities of dhira or a sober person. Just like, for an example, when a bulb is loosely connected with the electric wire, it blinks, it gives a light for a while, and again it gets switches off. However, when the bulb is connected with a constant supply of electricity, then it removes all the darkness from the room. Similarly, is the situation of a person who have undergone inner awakening. Once he's able to tap into the unlimited divine grace, he becomes a beacon or beacon of hope and light in the otherwise lives of people who find no joy or no hope in the life. Such a person you can consider like a 60-watt bulb walking in the night time, bringing light. Or, I mean, that's a very gross analogy. Like, let's make it a little more refined analogy. Such a person is like a moon in otherwise a dark night in the life of an individual. In the night time, it's the light of the moon that lights up the whole sky. And such is the person. And we all have that opportunity to become one like that if we understand the message of Bhagavad Gita. And that will be the subject matter of our today's discussion. So today we'll be discussing about chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, title as Contents of the Gita Summarized, where this theme of inner awakening will be discussed. Now, this is one of the longest chapters of Bhagavad Gita. As the title says, Contents of Gita Summarized, which means the whole synopsis of the rest of the Bhagavad Gita has been given in this chapter 2. And let's take a look what we're going to discuss in this. It's a long chapter, so we'll see how well we do with the time today. But be mentally prepared that I may take 5-10 minutes more than our scheduled time. Anyways, we got late in the beginning. So there are 3 key subjects being discussed in this chapter. To begin with, first, Arjuna's mind being depressed, Arjuna, with his eyes filled with tears, with all humility, approaches Krishna for guidance. And Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak for the very first time in the pages of Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter 2. The Lord Shri Krishna enlightens Arjuna about the fundamental aspect of one's identity. Or else you can say, introduces to the fundamental wisdom of spiritual, a fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom. After that, when Krishna introduces Arjuna to his, this fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom, the Lord Shri Krishna talks about how to live our life. Once you have attained, once you have got the spiritual wisdom, or how does our life look different with the spiritual wisdom? In other words, practical application of spiritual wisdom. And finally, the third section of chapter 2 is what are the symptoms of a person who actually has undergone inner awakening or who has become self-realized through this spiritual wisdom. These are the 3 aspects which are highlighted in chapter 2. And to make it a little more easier, let us define an acronym for this chapter, which is Gita, G-I-T-A. Let's begin with G for Guru, where G stands for Guru. From verse number 1 to verse number 10 of chapter number 2 is being covered in this particular theme. A very important section that marks the beginning of one's spiritual life, that is, wherein one takes or accepts the guidance or shelter of a bona fide Guru. As we know, Arjuna was determined not to fight, but simultaneously he was torn and confused, not knowing what is the best for him. At the end of the chapter 1, he had put down his Gandiva, sat down on the chariot with eyes filled with tears, with the voice choked. He said to Krishna, "My dear Lord, I don't know what is best for me." And that is being described in this section where, in this mental state, Arjuna approaches Lord Shri Krishna for guidance. So, our very first poll question, all of you, as we have said, we're going to have polls to interact. Right now, on the basis of Arjuna's situation, the very first question for all of you is: when a person is faced with predicaments, then he only has 2 choices: give it up and live a miserable life. I quit, which actually Arjuna wanted to do, or else take to superior guidance to resolve it. What will you do? Don't tell me what Arjuna did. I'm asking, what will you do? I hope this question will be posted for YouTube audience also. Okay, great. So we can give 30 seconds in general, and after 30 seconds, we can close the poll and move ahead. So what's the summary?
100% extra superior guidance.
100%. Hare Krishna, really? Nobody's gonna say quit. All of you gonna say we'll take a superior guidance. Where do you get a superior guidance? Guidance is one thing. To get a superior guidance is a more challenging thing. But nonetheless, good try. Happy to know that. None of you going to say, I quit. All right, all right. Let me just go back to my presentation. So the point is, when we are faced with challenging situations, when we are confused, ultimately we need a guide. We need superior advice. And that's what happened in the life of Arjuna. Arjuna approached Lord Shri Krishna and he said, my dear Lord, please help me. Only such a decision can be made by intelligent people. Those who are not intelligent, generally, they think they know everything about their life and they have chosen to quit. That is the best decision. I don't need to ask anyone. However, Arjuna didn't thought like that. And therefore, Arjuna approached Lord Shri Krishna in the 2nd chapter, 7th verse. And with the folded hands, he looked at Krishna and he said, my dear Lord, please guide me. And Arjuna said, Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava prachami tvam dharma samuda chetaha yashrehasya nishchitam bruhi tanme Nishyas sadimam tvam prapannam. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Because of the miserliness, my own weakness, I have become bewildered. I don't know what is best for me. I'm confused about the best course of action for myself. Prachami, therefore I'm approaching you. Prachami tvam, therefore I'm approaching you. Dharma samuda cheta. Dharma, please tell me what is my duty. Samuda cheta, my consciousness is clouded. I don't know what is right, what is wrong. Yashrehasya nishitam, confidently. Brohitan, may you please tell me what is best for me. Why you should tell me? Shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam, because now I accept you as my spiritual master and I'm a soul surrendered unto you. And like this, very, very interesting, very interesting. Arjuna, such a great personality, has decided to humble himself and accept to a superior guidance. To acknowledge one's weakness and defect and confess it and then accept treatment is not an easy thing. It is only possible if a person is truly humble. It takes a lot of courage and humility to accept failure and one's own weakness. How many of you agree with that? Let's go with another poll. Is it easy to admit one's weakness and mistakes? Yes or no? How many of you think it's very easy for me to disclose my heart to another person and tell him what are my challenges that I'm going through? Yes, no, not sure. Generally, it's very, very difficult. But for Arjuna, he was able to do it. He was able to tell Lord Shri Krishna, and we'll discuss what happened because of it. Because unless we reveal our heart, unless we understand what is our situation or deficiency, we cannot succeed in life. Just like a person who is suffering from fever, unless he goes to a doctor and follows a prescription given by a doctor, can he ever recover from the sickness? Not at all. Therefore, it is said, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. So conclusion of the poll was, so majority of you say it's not that easy to actually confess and take to, reveal one's own heart. But Arjuna could do it because there was a sense of humility. And why we fail to do so? There is this big ego, which is generally said to be a one-eyed demon, who prevents us from taking guidance. That's the point about it. So as the saying goes, success has many fathers. People don't mind, claiming success, but when it comes to failure, nobody says, nobody is willing to accept it. So therefore, Arjuna being very humble, because Arjuna was humble, and this humility gave him the strength to acknowledge and take responsibility of his weaknesses. And that's the power of humility. Arjuna, despite being an accomplished and a fearless warrior, actually the one who can bring fear or who can frighten others, such a powerful and a chaste, a man of integrity, a man of a high-class character, highly accomplished. The whole world knew him to be the best of the archer, best of the bowmen, because he has already defeated the condition of Drupad and won the hand of Draupadi by passing such a difficult competition. He had defeated great of the warriors. He had defeated Karna prior to the war, Bhishma, Pitama, Dronacharya also. Not only this, he had defeated the whole Gandharva's clan who had fought, with whom Arjuna had to fight to rescue Duryodhana. And so many other examples are there. Such an accomplished person, if you are, by default, there is a sense of a pride. And to that degree, it becomes difficult to acknowledge that there is a flaw in me. Yes or no? Somebody who is a roadside person, somebody, let's say he's a beggar, for him to say that I need money is not a big thing. You cannot call him that he's humble because he's asking for money. He doesn't have anything. What's the problem with asking? For one who has everything and then for him to bow down, that is a sign of humility. So the key point or the lesson that we can learn from Arjuna for our practical application is, unless we acknowledge our own deficiencies, until then we cannot accept any guidance and cannot rise above our weaknesses. Once again, the example of meeting a doctor. You will only go to a doctor to see a doctor when you know that you have a fever, and you will only follow a prescription when you're sure that this prescription can fix me. So unless we recognize our own deficiency, how do we overcome it? Lesson 2, to be progressive in life, it is essential to cultivate humility. It's not a very progressive terminology. In the modern world, people think to be proud is progressive, to be humble is weakness. But no, that's not the case. Humility is an actual strength. To be progressive, it is essential to cultivate humility. Why? Because it protects us from being falsely proud of our accomplishments and strengths, which otherwise can prove futile in another situation or environment. Yes or no? Let me ask a simple question. There could be a person, a cricketer, who could be the best batsman, but can he remain best batsman forever? Certainly, sometime in future, there would be a bowler who would be a better bowler or who would be a better player than this individual. Similarly, there could be a film star who could be famous for a certain duration of his life as a best actor, but not forever. There would always be somebody who, in future, if not today, would be better than the person. Yes or no? Similarly, to think that I am the best and that I don't need any help or guidance is actually not the right attitude, because all our strength and accomplishment may prove futile in a different environment or a situation, just like happened with Arjuna at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Lesson 3, the fundamental step in spirituality is to accept a bona fide guru who comes in an authentic lineage of spiritual teachers and who has mastered the spiritual art. The point is, for everything in our life, or let's say the most things in our life, we require guidance and instructions of a qualified teacher. And the spiritual discipline is no different. To make progress in spiritual life, to undergo the process of inner awakening, we definitely need guidance from those who have attained, who have accomplished inner awakening or have undergone complete self-realization. Therefore, we need a bona fide guru to guide us, to help us awaken our inner consciousness, to help us on the journey of inner awakening. Like this, from the life of Arjuna, as we discussed 3 lessons here. And yes, another quote, as it is said, one who accepts himself as a guru accepts a fool for a disciple. Many times people say, oh, in the spiritual life, why do I need a guru? I can read Bhagavad Gita and become a spiritual master myself. So this is a statement for such qualified people. One who accepts himself as a guru accepts a fool for a disciple. So Arjuna teaches us some very important lesson, as we talked about: be humble, be progressive, be grateful. Great. Similarly, Arjuna also teaches us 3 keys to success. As we all know, at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna took up his Gandiva bow. For the next 18 days, he fought the battlefield of Kurukshetra. At the battlefield of Kurukshetra, at the end, he was victorious. Pandava was victorious. So in complete state of hopelessness, he went on becoming victorious. From complete state of insecurity and fear, He brought about insecurity and fear in the hearts of his enemies. How did this transformation happen? And there are 3 steps or keys to success that we learn from the behavior of Arjuna. And the first, he was always eager to learn. Either we become the best of the teacher, we should still be in the mood of a student. Arjuna, despite being such an accomplished warrior, yet he was willing to surrender and accept Krishna as his spiritual master. Second, he was humble and therefore could acknowledge his weakness. That's the point. Unless we are genuinely humble and understand our situation and position and understand there are people who are superior, who knows more than I, and I also need a guidance. Until then, we cannot deal with our weaknesses. And the third, we cannot rise our weaknesses. And the third, just like Arjuna accepted a bona fide teacher or a guru, similarly for all of us, in our journey on the path of spiritual awakening, we all need a bona fide teacher who can guide us and keep us on the track. And that's how the first section from verse number 1 to 10 concludes. After this, when Arjuna has surrendered to Krishna, Krishna begins to speak from text number 11 to text number 30 of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. And the second section, where I stands for identity, where Krishna talks to Arjuna about the most fundamental aspect of our existence. And that is, who am I? If I have to ask a question to you, or if somebody else have to ask this question to me probably 15 years ago, I would have said, my name is Mayank Agarwal, I'm Hindu, I'm born in India, I am an engineer, I'm so-and-so, my surname is this, blah, 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 I'm a male, I'm this many years old. Great. But actually that does not at all represents who am I. What do I mean by this? To give an example, everybody in this world is undergoing an identity crisis. Yesterday we discussed about some other crisis. Today we're talking about identity crisis. What is that identity crisis? Let's reflect it for a few minutes. At the time of birth, look back into your own life. Definitely there's no point looking back too much because you don't remember what happened at the time of birth. But I'm pretty sure you know about it. At least you know, theoretically. You might have seen kids getting born and watch the situation. At the time of birth, any of our birth, we even did not knew what's our gender. We were told we are male and female. And for the next 3 to 5 or 7 days, we did not even have a name with which we so strongly identify. We even didn't know who is our mother and father. We were told, Beta, Ma. And Ma pointed, Beta, Pa. I mean, Papa. Hare Krishna. Okay, so I'll just make a side point here. So, where are we? Yeah, we have the thing. So, we were told who's our parents, what's our surname, what's our gender, what's our name. Everything was given. And this is what I called as tagging at the time of birth. Hare Krishna. So birth and death, let's look at what are the tags we are given at the time of birth: name, gender, nationality, religion, etc. And at the time of death, all of these ceases to exist. Only thing that remains, if it remains today, is your single photograph hung in the living room of your descendants with the dried up flowers of the plastic flowers today. Even today's generation did not bother about it. They probably take a photo of yours and put it into the laptop computer somewhere as a memorial. So at the time of death, nothing. Does your name counts? Your gender counts? Nothing. Everything ceases to exist. Once the body is burnt to ashes, your identity is lost. And for this durational life between the birth and the death, all through this life, what we do is spend all of our time and energy in defending these temporary texts. My religion, my gender, my nationality, my family, and so forth. But actually, none of this existed to you before you took birth and ceases to exist after you die. So lack of understanding of it leads to identity crisis. So here is my question to all of you, a poll. Do you think that we require a better understanding of ourselves? How many of you agree with that? How many of you think we only know very superficial reality about our existence? Or you think that I know everything about myself? I know who am I? Where am I going? What's the purpose of my life? Everything I know of it. Or if you think I need to know more about it, yes or no? So you keep giving answers. You have another 15 seconds to go ahead. I'll continue with the discussion. So, who am I? Lord Shri Krishna speaks about the subject matter in this set of verses between 11 to 30. And Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dihantara praptes dhiras tatra namuyati. So the poll result says 90% of people agree that they need a better understanding of who they are. Thank you. So I'll continue the session. If the answers were the other way around, I would say, thank you, Hare Krishna, we'll end for the day. So it's worth discussing ahead because you're requesting to know more about it. There's a very important section actually where Lord Shri Krishna explains the truth about our existence. If only people can take guidance of Bhagavad Gita and understand who they are, the world would be an entirely different place to live in. Why? Because Krishna says here, it is the body that is undergoing changes from the boyhood to the youth to the middle age to the old age and finally to death. But the person behind it, the soul, is the same, which is undergoing, you can say a transmigration, a transition from one type of body to another type of body within a single lifetime. And therefore, Krishna says, like the soul is passing through different bodies within the single lifetime, at the end of the body, at the end of the life, similarly, the soul passes from one body to another body. Arjuna, relax, fight. You cannot kill anyone. Why you cannot kill him? Krishna will talk about it. Nonetheless, the point is, if we can understand this fundamental truth of Bhagavad Gita about our own identity, the world we live in will be a far different place. The world will become free from conflicts, which mainly arises from our attempts to defend our temporary identifications or texts. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna, right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, establishes our true identity, where Krishna says body and soul are different. We are eternally spirit souls inhabiting temporary bodies, just like the driver operates a car or a parrot within the cage, utilizing the vehicle. Similarly, the spirit soul is meant to utilize the body to accomplish the goal of human purpose of life. Although living within the body, we are simultaneously different from it, temporarily operating it to perform activity, to fulfill our desires and interact with the world around. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna in second chapter 20th verse tells Arjuna, indeed, you are it. न जायते म्रियेते वा कदाचन नायं भूत्वा भवित्वा न भूयः अजो नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. What dies is the body, not न जायते म्रियेते वा कदाचन. You have never taken birth, you never die, you are eternal. What takes birth, what dies is the body. Arjuna, you are eternal. Then Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, then what does death mean? What does it mean the body dies? I am eternal. What does it mean? It gives an analogy in the 22nd verse of second chapter. Vasam sijirani yatha vihaya navani granati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Vasam means vastra, means clothes. Jirnani means old. As the clothes becomes old and torn, we throw it away. Similarly, when the body grows old, becomes invalid, then the soul gives up the body and accepts. That's all. That's all about death. Arjuna said, really? That's all? Krishna said, well, don't worry. Don't be so fearful about it. Arjuna began to wonder about what happens actually after death. You have given up your body. What's next? You give up your body, you accept another body. That is called reincarnation. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityo dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad pariharyarthe natam sochitam arhasi. 27th verse. Krishna says, one who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death is sure to take birth again. As sure as when there is a sunset in the evening, there will definitely be sunrise tomorrow. That's the law of the nature. Every sunrise is followed by sunset. Every winter is followed by monsoon or the summer season. Or you can say a spring and then the summer and the monsoon. This is the law of the nature. Arjuna heard from Krishna and he became convinced about his identity. But imagine if Arjuna belonged to a modern education system, a graduate of IIT or RAC or MIT, Massachusetts, Boston, or wherever college. If Arjuna was graduated from today's modern education system, he would definitely have not got convinced by Krishna's statement. He would have asked, is there any scientific? You show me, I'll believe. How many of you agree this is what the modern people does? So considering if that would be the situation, Hare Krishna, is the sound okay? Some people are saying the sound is low. We can increase the sound in the speaker here, right? Hare Krishna. I hope the sound is okay for everyone. Those of you cameras on, give me a thumbs up.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, nobody's giving thumbs up. I say I'm audible or not. Okay. All right. And now I'm getting thumbs up. Okay, great. So Arjuna would ask, is there any scientific evidence in that case? Well, yes, there are plenty of scientific evidence. Don't worry about it. The hundreds and hundreds of books have been written about proving incarnation. Those of you who are quite interested to know about the subject matter and have not attended our previous series, Insights from Bhagavad Gita, please go and hear to the third topic that was titled as Reincarnation, if I'm correct. Please watch it. In case if you would like to get the access to that video, you can type it on the Zoom or the YouTube, and our admin will share the link for that video with you now or maybe later on. So out-of-body experience, near-death experience, we have discussed the whole science of it, scientific evidences. There's Dr. Ian Stevenson, who had actually certified and verified 3,000 cases of reincarnation. Till we say reincarnation doesn't exist, what else evidence we need? There are plenty of evidences. The question arises, why do people still doubt existence of soul? Let's take a look at the first reason. Why there is so much misunderstanding about the subject of soul. Some people say the soul cannot be seen by our senses. So how can I accept it? My question to this intelligent breed is, what can you see? If it is dark, can you see your own hand? You cannot see your own hand. You're demanding to see the soul. There are many things in this world we don't see. I'm a graduate from electronics engineering. I'm a fortunate, unfortunate candidate who spent 6 years with electronic engineering, never saw electron in my life. Can you imagine? I spent 6 years of my life studying electronics engineering. 6 years means not that I failed 2 years and then I graduated. What I meant is 4 plus 2, BTech and MTech together. That is how it makes 6 years. These days you have to give a disclaimer for everything. People have such a negative thought. They say, oh, Prabhuji failed 2 years and he finished. Bachelor's in 6 years. No, that's not what I meant by. So 6 years I did. Can you imagine what a fortunate or unfortunate soul? I never saw the electron in my life. Even not a PhD fellow has seen. He's more fortunate. After spending 10 years studying electronic engineering, never get to see electron. Why? Electrons cannot be seen by a naked eye. How the electrons were discovered? The reflection on the cathode ray tube was interpreted as the presence of an electron. How many have seen air, by the way? Anyone? Air is all over. You feel the presence by the sense of touch. So what can we see? So that's my question to this intelligent breed. For everything they have a question, can you show me? For such an intelligent breed, I have a question. Can you show me your brain? Yes or no? That's the reason I'm calling you intelligent breed. You can show it, so you don't have it. Okay, let's go to the next one. What is the other misunderstanding? Some say your philosophy of soul promotes violence. Not at all, my dear sir. Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita ahead is going to talk about law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. Philosophy of soul does not promote violence. It doesn't mean because we are eternal, we can go ahead killing about anyone. Whatever we do, accordingly we get a reaction. If we cause harm to anyone, similarly harm is caused to us. So it does not promote violence. And the third misunderstanding about the soul is life comes from chemicals. You only live once. Maybe you live once. You talk about it. We live forever. That's not the case. I mean, this is something we discussed at length in our previous session about how this whole idea of we are a bundle of chemicals is a very bizarre and very ridiculous understanding or philosophy put forward, a philosophy of science without any evidence. If we are just a bundle of chemicals, why don't you preserve chemicals and allow a person to continue? Why there is so much death happening in the COVID crisis? I mean, what happened? What is COVID doing with the chemicals? If it's causing harm to the chemical, you fix a chemical. Is there a problem of chemical supply? There are plenty of chemical outside. The point is, there's no scientific evidence that life comes from chemical. In fact, there is a scientific evidence that life comes from life. And it is life that gives shape to chemical, not the chemicals give shape to life. So to conclude with, Lord Shri Krishna, through this series of verses or discussion talks about how we are eternal living entities. It is the soul that is changing bodies. To conclude with, until we realize our true identity as spirit soul, we will undergo the process of reincarnation, accepting various material bodies and the subsequent sufferings and distresses of life arising due to our identification with the temporary labels, name, country, gender, nationality, etc. And this is the first teaching that the Guru imparts to his student. The answer to the eternal question of who am I can set the living entity free. And it is an answer that is worth hearing again and again. Therefore, it is said by C.S. Lewis, very interesting statement. You don't have a soul. You are a soul and you have a body. You're a spiritual being undergoing a human experience. And that covers the first part of chapter 2, fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom. And understanding it's very, very important for creating harmony within and without. To give an example, during one of my travel back in America, I met an American lady and we began to talk about, and then she said, in her family, there are two members. One is Aaron, other is Phillips. Aaron was the name of a dog and Phillips was her husband. And then she said, when our course of discussion continued, during the course of discussion, she said that she loves her dog more than her husband. That was a little bizarre to me. I mean, I know people love dog, but now people start loving dog more than husband and wife and son. That is too much. I said, really, why? Why do you love dog more than husband? She said something very profound. She said, because my physical look or outlook does not affect my relationship with the dog. My dog loves me regardless of how I looked. I didn't have to spend my time in front of the mirror to dress up myself to look nice and beautiful. But for my husband, for my partner, this is what mattered a lot. At that point of time, I was thinking, although she had no understanding of a spiritual existence or spiritual life, yet he had understood the superficiality of the relationships based entirely on one's physical appearance. How much ever we try to preserve our beauty, it fades away with age. And similarly, our relationship, if they are centered around physical beauty, also fades away with time. Considering ourselves a mere mortal body creates a lot of insecurity and fear. And this is just one example that I personally experienced talking to someone. And you can see that in the world around. So if you want to have a progressive, harmonious, and the blissful life, it's very important to understand I am a spiritual being undergoing a human experience. That brings us to the second subject titled as Dharma of Soul, which means if I am a spiritual being, then how does my tomorrow looks different than today? Lord Shri Krishna speaks about this subject matter in verse number 31 to verse number 53, where Krishna speaks about two duties. All of us at this point in time are aware of one duty, and that one duty is to maintain ourselves, to earn a livelihood, to take care of our physical well-being, and to take care of the families, relatives, and whatnot. But Krishna talks about there are two duties. One is Swadharma, that is our social responsibility, obligation to take care of the self and the friends and family member. And second duty is called as Nitya Dharma or Nitya Seva, Swadharma or Nitya Dharma. Nitya Dharma refers to our responsibility in our relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is fulfilled or accomplished by taking to spiritual practices such as Bhakti Yoga, which is delineated in the upcoming chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So dharma, or this duty, which is prescribed as two duties, describes the two duties, is actually two dharmas, Swadharma and Nitya Dharma. Dharma is loosely translated as religion, but that's not the actual definition of dharma. Dharma refers to intrinsic nature. Just like for sugar, what is the intrinsic nature? Sweetness. You cannot remove sweetness from sugar and call it a sugar. Similarly, what is the nature of water? Intrinsic nature is liquidity. If there's no liquidity, there is no meaning of water. So what is the intrinsic nature of a living entity? Is to serve. Every living entity at any point of time are always serving. Take a case of a tree or a plant or an animal or a human being. All of us are serving. Knowingly, unknowingly, we are a part of a life cycle, what they call a life chain, where every living entity depends on other living entity. And knowingly, we do so many other services towards a family, towards a society. So nature of every living entity or dharma of every living entity is to serve. So as much as you're inclined to perform your swadharma, occupational responsibilities, similarly, once we understand we are a spiritual being, we should also perform our spiritual duty, that is Nitya Dharma, responsibility towards our relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is what is called as Nitya Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, or Swadharma. The Lord Shri Krishna, in this series of verses from verse number 31 to 38, tells Arjuna that happiness comes from the proper execution of one's Swadharma. If you want to be happy, or in other words, if you want to acquire worldly happiness, you need to perform your occupational duties sufficiently and properly. And after this, from verse number 39 to 53, Krishna speaks about how to perform our duty. And here Krishna speaks about the science, what we call as Dharma Yoga. So what's happening at this point in time? Arjuna is very much inclined to give up his duty as a warrior. He wants to give up his Swadharma. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna, in this set of verses from 39 to 53, he advises Arjuna not to give up the work, but to give up the desire to enjoy the result of work that is as equal or is equivalent to renouncing the work, which means taking to renounce order. Rather than renouncing the work, just renounce the spirit to enjoy the work itself. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna speaks in the 47th verse, one of the most quoted verse and misunderstood verse of Bhagavad Gita, that is, Karmanevadhikaraste. Many companies have their slogan, Karmanevadhikaraste. Your duty is to perform duty. Your dharma is to perform duty, which means perform labor, but they don't speak ahead. Karmanevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan. Krishna says you have the right to perform your duty, but you cannot claim on the result or the fruit of your work. Makes sense? Yes or no? For example, you're working in a company. Would you get promoted or not? Is it in your hand? You may say, you may think it's in your hand. Fine. Ultimately, it depends on the mood of manager. Or you can say the perceptions of manager about you, isn't it? So there are many, many factors that determines if you're going to get promoted or not. For example, just like as a student when we're studying in school or college, we would study nicely, but ultimately what results we get is not in our hand. That's what Krishna is saying. Perform your duty, be detached from the result, because results are ultimately given by me. Ma karma phala hetu, but don't consider yourself to be the cause of your work. Ma sanga sarva karmani, and never be attached. Do not think that you can give up your duty. That is not the way of it. So, somebody may wonder, why Krishna wants Arjuna to perform his duty? What is wrong if Arjuna takes to renunciate? Isn't it? He wants to renounce. I mean, generally, the sadhus go around and talk to people to inspire them to take to renunciation. And people do not want to renounce. Finally, one person have decided to take to renunciation. Krishna is saying, don't renounce. Is it contradictory? Yes or no? Why Krishna is saying, discouraging Arjuna? Krishna says that total renunciation of activity is not possible at the beginning stages of spiritual life. It is better to engage in one's occupational duty or swadharma without being attached to its results, which will gradually purify one's consciousness. Therefore, in essence, Lord Shri Krishna actually wants Arjuna. And through Arjuna, Krishna is teaching all of us. The Lord wants us to perform both our duties, Swadharma and the Nitya Dharma, hand in hand together and live our life, which, according to Bhagavad Gita, is the progressive means of living a life or harmonious way or a way of life that will definitely give us success. Not to give up, not to be too much attached, simultaneously perform our spiritual duties, like that, continue living our life. That is what Krishna says, according to Bhagavad Gita, is the best way of living. Because sometimes people become too detached from the worldly duties, and sometimes people are too attached from it. So that's not the idea. Harmonious living means perform your duties in a detached manner and cultivate attachment towards your spiritual life and take responsibility of your relationship towards the Supreme Lord. Such a person eventually will become self-realized or will undergo inner awakening, which means self-satisfied and fully conscious of one's relationship with the Lord. When Krishna spoke to Arjuna to perform his duty like this, then Arjuna pondered. And this brings us to the last section of this chapter, where Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, how do I recognize somebody who have undergone inner awakening, or attained the perfection of inner awakening or self-realization? How do I understand that person? Therefore, Arjuna asked following questions about such a self-realized soul. What are his symptoms? How does such a person speak? How does he walk? How does he sit? And Lord Shri Krishna talks about it. Krishna says, what are his symptoms? Which means, how does he review his position? Such a person is free from any desire for worldly happiness. All his needs are fulfilled by his spiritual practice, which means such a person has no obligation to perform swadharma. Now he is completely liberated from social obligations. He has no desire for that. He is totally happy performing his activities in relationship to the Supreme. That's the symptom. What is his speech? How does such a person speak with self-realize? Which means, how does he react to different circumstances, to an anger, to affection? How does he react? Krishna says, Dukhe dukhe samaya kritva labha labho jaya jaya. Is impartial, is not affected, is not elated, either of the situation. And he is freed from vita, freed from raga, bhaya, and krodha. How does such a person sit? Which means, how does such a person restrain his senses and mind? Krishna gives the analogy of a tortoise. Just like a tortoise draws his limbs within his shell when faced with any danger, similarly, such a person has full control on his mind and senses and has the ability to engage the mind and senses at his will and withdraw them at his will. Such is the potential and the strength of the self-realized person. Some of you might wonder, what's the big deal about it? It's a huge, big deal. The best of the politicians, the most powerful politician, to the business tycoon, or the best of the sportsmen or the film stars, you know very well what kind of life they live. It's very, very difficult to control the mind and sense. But for such a person, is the actual king, because he has learned to rule his mind and senses. Whereas all the people who I named, they are servants of their mind and senses. Both, how does such a person walk? Which means, how does he engage his senses? He engages senses, Krishna says, only in my service and finds great satisfaction in it, which means is always happy performing his Nitya Dharma or spiritual practice. Like that, such a person who is a spiritualist and a transcendentalist, he is always awakened to his true goal of life and always blissful. And that is how we can identify one who has actually undergone the process of self-awakening. Finally, Krishna says, such a person only attains to real happiness. He is never disturbed by the flow of desire, just like an ocean is never disturbed by the flow of the river. Similarly, such a person is never disturbed by the flow of desires. Finally, because is not disturbed by the flow of desires, is never bewildered, and ultimately such a person enters the kingdom of Godhead. So this is how Lord Shri Krishna explains the process of inner awakening through the yoga of bhakti. Right now, we have not discussed anything about bhakti, nor even about yoga, but we have just talked about who am I. If I am a spiritual, then how does my tomorrow look different than today? Then we learned about two kinds of dharma, nitya dharma and swadharma. And then finally, we talked about uh, what are the symptoms of a person who actually attained perfection. Because Krishna says the one who properly performs his swadharma and nitya dharma will attain to the perfection of life. Arjuna asks, how does such a person looks like? What are his symptoms? How does he speak? How does he walk? How does he sit? After answering all that, Krishna concludes, only a person who has learned the art of balancing his occupational duty, his spiritual responsibilities, can become a true yogi or can become a really accomplished person in life. To conclude with, Krishna says that such a person is never disturbed and has the right to return back to the kingdom. To conclude with, Arjuna should fight was established by the Lord in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. The physical activity thus being settled, the Lord will gradually refine Arjuna's motivations now on doing work for oneself to doing work as a service to the Lord. The second chapter revealed the real nature of the soul. In the next chapters, the Lord will explain the method to realize this nature of soul. So here, Arjuna have acknowledged that he is confused about his dharma. He took shelter of the Supreme Lord, and Supreme Lord have guided him on the path of inner awakening by introducing him to his real identity and his responsibility. So, like this, in this chapter 2, Lord Shri Krishna, along with answering the query of Arjuna, I've also defeated the 5 arguments. I'm not going to speak about the 5 arguments. I have given the references of the verses in which Lord Shri Krishna refutes the 5 arguments. Considering the time, I'll just show you the slide. Slides will be available to you maybe in a day or two on the course portal. You can always download the slide deck and refer to these verses in which Lord Shri Krishna refutes these arguments. So like this, in the second chapter, Lord Shri Krishna also refused the 5 arguments that Arjuna gave in the previous chapter. Finally, with this, we come to the conclusion of our chapter 2. Now, Arjuna, knowing that he is a spirit soul, a spiritual being, has to perform his swadharma and nitya dharma, is faced with another challenge: how to work smartly, or how to work effectively. In tomorrow's session, we'll be covering the topic of art of smart work from chapter 3 of Bhagavad. With that, thank you so much for joining us today evening for the second episode of the Gita Essence series. We'll pause here. If in case you will have any questions or any comments, we can open the forum now. Mother Dipasha, back to you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. This was a wonderful session which covered the chapter 2 on the inner awakening, and we look forward to have chapter 3 tomorrow, the art of work, which all of us want to know. I could see some queries. So taking first queries from the YouTube. Uh, Prabhuji, Vijay Kumar ji has asked, Vijay Kumar Poddar ji, what is dharma, or what is the meaning of word dharma?
Dharma, as the Sanskrit word goes, which means the eternal identity of the living entity. Just like we gave an example of a sugar, what is the eternal identity? Sweetness. So, what is the eternal identity of the living entity, which is inseparable? That is his nature to serve. We cannot take the nature to serve away from the living entity. There is no meaning to living entity. And you can think about and look around in the world, everyone is serving someone or somebody, if not their own mind and sense. That's our situation. And that is what is actually called as dharma, our eternal identity. Therefore, when 5,000 years ago, Lord Shri Krishna spoke this science of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. There were no man-made religions that we know of today, what we call as Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism, or for that reason, Hinduism or Sikhism, etc., etc. At that point of time, there is only one religion known as Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternity, or which would be translated also as Varnashrama Dharma. Varnashram Dharma was designed in such a way to engage everybody in the service according to their inherent disposition or propensities, so that a person is happy while serving. And that was the whole goal of Varnashram Dharma. So a person is happy while serving, because to serve is the nature of every living entity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So I request our Zoom participants, if they have any queries, they may raise their hands. We'll allow you to unmute and you may ask directly the questions. Meanwhile, I'll take another
And
question. Yes,
as
Prabhuji.
Mother Dipasha, I generally ask if our at least Zoom participants switch on their camera, so at least I get to know who all are there.
Yes, Prabhuji. So we
So you
request
may
you to
request
switch
that.
on your videos, and if you have any queries, you may just raise your hands. We'll take that particular query.
Oh,
So
good
we,
to say, good to see our Suresh uncle from our previous session and many of the participants from the previous program. Good. Anyways, any questions now?
yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, there is one question from Rishikesh ji from Zoom only. How can one perform his or her duties without being attached to it?
What are we attached to? Not to the duty. Generally, we are attached to the results. And if you are told and taught that the results do not depend on your effort, actually, entirely on your effort, the more you are attached to the results, the more you become disturbed. Any intelligent person will understand that it's better for me not to be attached to it. For example, I remember long ago when I used to do program in the corporate house or within the companies, one of the students came and met me after the class and she said, I'm very disturbed. I said, why? She said, just now, in the month of February or March, what we call as your promotion thing that happens, appraisal month, that is called as. She said, I went through that appraisal month. I worked so hard. I deserved promotion. I did not got a promotion. Somebody else who didn't work hard got a promotion. Because of the strong attachment to the idea that she deserved, because she was attached to the result, she didn't got it, she became frustrated. And all through the year, nonetheless, she had worked hard for it. So this whole idea or this whole spirit of detachment develops gradually as our material fever goes down. So the process of bhakti yoga, which means as you follow the prescription of Bhagavad Gita in your life, just like when you follow the prescription of the doctor, your temperature comes down from 102 to 100 to 98.6, whatever is the normal temperature. Similarly, when we'll apply the teachings of Bhagavad Gita or of bhakti yoga in your life, but naturally, you'll gradually lose your attachment to the results of your work. That's a gradual thing and natural thing. You don't have to intellectually work for it. It automatically happens when our mind, when our chetana, our consciousness begins to get purified through the spiritual practice. What you need to do right now is learn and understand the science of yoga and begin with the application. And give yourself a time, you will undergo an experience where you will yourself feel more peaceful and relaxed and less worried about the results of your work, which are the major cause of anxiety.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, next question we have from YouTube from Akshay Deshpande ji, and the question is coming from the verse Karmanye Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana. He's saying if we cannot target, if we are not attached to the target, that is karm phal, then how we are going to perform?
Okay, you're talking about setting a goal. Setting a goal is different about being attached to the goal. I mean, if you want to perform, you can definitely set your goal. If that's a question, if is it on Zoom or YouTube?
It's on YouTube, Prabhuji. Question was
Okay, so
how you can perform without target, karm phal.
so you can. I mean, setting up a goal is never a problem. Point is not to be attached to that. That's the whole message Krishna is saying, that the result is ultimately not in your hands. To work for the result is your duty. But to demand the result is not your onus. You're getting a point? For example, you go and write your CBSE board exam, 10th or 12th exam, isn't it? You may have studied well, but when you're writing an exam, how many of you have experience? Those of you right now here who have cameras on, how many of you have experienced a situation where while writing a paper, suddenly you forgot something? Raise your hands. And you're scratching your head so much. Oh, I just knew before I started the exam. How did I forgot? Now, whom do you blame? You worked so hard all through and you might have solved that same question just a previous evening. But today, while in the examination hall, you forgot. So do your duty. But becoming attached to the result is what causes anxiety. That is the point. Now, why did you forget? Probably you were too attached to the result. And you became a little, ignorant of the work that you had to do. Have you seen kids? They daydream a lot. You have heard of night dream. I'm talking about daydreaming. What is daydreaming? Means they dream about being successful. Now, in the upcoming exam of IIT, they are dreaming about my photo would be in the newspaper everywhere, the IIT topper. And such people who daydream a lot are the ones who even don't qualify for IIT. You getting the point? Because being too attached to the result, they are missing out on the opportunity to act, to perform their duty. What is their duty? Stop daydreaming, start studying. Yes or no? Making sense? Rather than performing your duty, you're dreaming about because you're too attached to the result. That is what is Ben Krishna saying. Don't do that.
Ji, Prabhuji.
We can share the reincarnation. Some people are asking on the.
Yes,
By the
Prabhuji.
way, it's up on the YouTube channel, Evolve Pune. There you'll find a Gita Wisdom series. Just scroll through the series. You'll definitely find a topic called as reincarnation. All right.
Ji, Prabhuji.
Or just type reincarnation, Evolve Pune on YouTube. You'll get it.
Prabhuji,
Previous Gita Wisdom.
Tripti ji
Go
has
ahead.
asked question that she is unable to understand the difference between brain and soul. Are they different? Or they same?
Where is she? Is she here or
Yeah, she's
on
on
YouTube?
Zoom only. Is Zoom only. Tripti Patil ji. The
Can you
question
raise your hand? Where is that?
Tripti Patil ji, can you raise your hand?
A couple of people out here. Okay. All right. I'm not sure if they can unmute or not. So my question to you is first, is there any difference between body and brain? Hare Krishna. Whoever asked a question, my question to you, is there any difference between body and brain? No. Is brain part of the body or brain is separate from the body? Okay, I don't know where the person who asked the question for the sake of others. Brain is a part of the body and not different than the body. So is body and soul different or same? We just learned body and soul are different. So brain is part of the body, hence proves body and soul. So you understand that mathematical equation now? A equals to B, B equals to C, this means A equals to C. Right? Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, another quick question. Prerna ji is saying that she understood the concept of soul, but she wants to understand the ghost. Does they exist or it's totally imaginary?
It's a little 8:30 in the night. I don't know if I should tell you some real life ghost stories, huh? I guess my answer gives you a hint enough that they exist.
Ji, Prabhuji.
But may not be as what are shown in the horror movies. Okay. Don't take it for serious what is shown in the horror movies. There are 8 varieties of them. Bhuta, Preta, Vishash, Betal. Vampire is also there. So these are not imaginations. These are real life caricatures of creatures. And yes, there is a whole description about it in Garuda Puran, who and in what condition becomes a ghostly being, who becomes a bhoot, who becomes pishash, betal, vampire, etc., etc. Actually, you really don't have to search out for ghosts. Sorry to say, my little experiences, people in the city are no less than ghosts these days. Have you been to villages, by the way? People are so kind, caring, affectionate. You give them a smile, they smile back at you. What is ghost? Ghost is somebody you cannot see. Even if that person is there, you don't feel the presence of it, right? Means there is no communication. That was a city people is. How many of you know your neighbors? Think about it. In the city life, back in the village or simple towns, everyone knew each other. Everyone knew not only about the neighbors, but about the neighbors' family, the in-laws' family. They would have met everyone. Now that is what it is. So don't worry about other ghosts. We have enough ghosts today to deal with. But yes, they do exist. Jokes apart.
Ji, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Munira ji is having question. Munira ji, could you please ask your question? Yeah.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
And there are some questions from YouTube also, Mother
Yes.
Dipasha. Take it after that. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah, Prabhuji, actually, I have one question. Like we say sometime that, like in this series, we are learning that for dharma we have to fight. Okay, but at the same time, where we are learning sometime that we have to accept the things the way it is. Okay, and like it is like this only. We have to accept it, and we have to go ahead in this life. Like if it is water, then it is a water. It is a air, it is a air. Then sometimes I get confused that if there is a lots of crimes are happening into the world, so we should avoid it or we should fight for that. And because when we do some comments on that,
What did Lord Shri Krishna ask Arjuna?
sorry.
What did Lord Shri Krishna ask Arjuna to do? To let the Duryodhan's rule flourish and let the crime continue, or you should fight against the crime?
No, they should tell that fight against the crime.
So I don't know where and who said that we should, accept the things as they are. Not like that. Accept the things as they are, which are beyond your limit to change. Change the things that you have the courage and within your limit to change. They're two different things. You're getting a point? We have to accept the things which are beyond our control to change. What can you do when you cannot change it? And change when you have the courage and capability to change. Arjuna had the capability to fight with the Kauravas and set them right. So Bhagavad Gita never talks about to accept things as it is. Like Bhagavad Gita never encourages, you accept any kind of injustice being done to you, take it as your law of karma. And no, it's not like that. If that was the case, Krishna could have said, Pandu, Yudhishthira, it is in your karma to be without the kingship. Why do you want to fight? Isn't it? So these are the little nuances of dharma for which we have to have patience to understand. You have to give yourself a time for patience hearing. You have to hear the message properly for a certain amount of duration. Let that message sink in. If not, hear it multiple times. Because right now we have cultivated so many wrong perceptions by watching so many TV serials about Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, etc. There's all hosh-posh here. And we mix different things and make a different interpretation. So what you have to do at this point of time, hear it attentively. If you're confused, hear it again. First of all, understand where in Krishna tell Arjuna to accept the society as it is. Krishna challenged Arjuna, go and fight. Where did Krishna tell Yudhishthira, this is your karma. So there is no question, you have to accept your karma. Don't fight. In fact, Krishna said, no, you have to fight to protect dharma. So these are the nuances which we understand when we have properly heard and read it. So Bhagavad Gita is a very complex, yet a simple subject matter. However, it needs time. So please give yourself a time to assimilate it before we come to any interpretation or conclusion of it. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, next question I'm taking from YouTube, Chaitanya Lad Prabhuji. He has asked that we understand that we are not bodies, we are soul. But in the current scenario, like in the pandemic, when we see lots of bodies are dying, then it's very difficult to remember or recall these things. So how we can overcome such feelings?
See, Arjuna also cried when his son Abhimanyu died. After all, we are a conscious being. Being conscious means we have emotions, we have sentiments. It's not that because we know we are a spirit soul, we are eternal. It doesn't mean we become emotionless. Okay, so if there is a suffering, certainly the heart of any genuine sadhu, which means, as I said, the heart of a sadhu is softer than a freshly churned butter. It's filled with so much compassion. So why wouldn't that person would feel the suffering of others? To not feel the suffering of others is actually a symptom of a hard-hearted person. And who is a hard-hearted person? One who is very self-centered and selfish. That is not a sadhu or a saintly person. Saintly person is very soft-hearted, compassionate, but naturally gets affected when he sees others suffering. That is a true understanding of I am a soul, not a body. Those who theoretically understand it, they intellectualize it and they think because I'm not a soul, I'm not a body soul, so therefore I should not feel about anything. That is not the one who have understood the message. This is interpretation of. Am I making the distinction clear?
Ji Prabhuji.
If you are a genuine sadhu, you would naturally feel sad about the suffering of others. Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear Lord, I don't need anything. I just want that every living entity in this world get liberated from their condition and attain you. My suffering is seeing them suffering. Otherwise, I have nothing to suffer about in my life. That's a genuine sadhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, there is a question from Zoom only by Rohit ji. He's asking, how can I stay away from developing ego? How should we develop the selfless and egoless service? So when we do service, sometimes we get the ego feeling. So
First of all, you have to understand what is ego. Ego refers to identity. There are two egos, false ego and true ego. What is false ego? Where one considers himself to be a mere body. I am Madan Sundar Das, I am Indian, I am male, I am a speaker, I am a student, I am teacher, whatnot, all designations. That is false ego. What is a true ego? When one understands the nature of the soul and knows the relationship of individual with the originator of the soul, which means the Supreme God. When one is established in that understanding, that means one have realized his true ego. And once you have a true ego, then there is no, there are no discrepancies in life. So now the question is all about journey from the false ego to true ego. And that is called as journey of self-discovery. It is not an overnight event that you hear it, go to sleep in the morning, you wake up with a true ego. It's a journey. It's a progress. You have to utilize your mind, your body, and intelligence to engage yourself in the process of bhakti yoga to accomplish the state of true ego. And that requires practice. That requires commitment, which is a very joyful process. And we'll be discussing about it in the upcoming themes that we have for Bhagavad Gita. All right.
Ji Prabhuji. Prabhuji, another question from YouTube. Gaurav ji is asking that how we can not disturbed by desires, because ultimately desires only set our goals.
So in your current situation, you are bound to be affected by desires. Unless we learn the art and science of dovetailing our desires for a higher cause. Till the time we think I am the controller, I am the proprietor, I am the enjoyer, till that time we're going to get exploited by our desires. But the moment we understand the science of Bhagavad Gita, the process of Bhakti Yoga, and we understand I'm an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme God, my position in this creation is like that of the position of a finger in the body. This finger has its value as long as connected with the body. If you disconnect this finger from the body, has no value. Similarly, we are nothing but representing different limbs of this creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one sense. We are supposed to cooperate, not compete. So as long as we have a competing spirit or desire, we'll continue to suffer. And again, to transform the spirit of competition to cooperation is the process of Bhagavad, is a process of purification of consciousness. And those of you who are ready to take to the process of this purification, we have to take to the very foremost step of Bhakti Yoga, that is mantra meditation. Every morning at 4:30, we have this mantra meditation program. Those of you are up for it, those of you are serious for it, you can join us every morning at 4:30. Those who are interested can ping to the admin or can ping now. We'll let you know about it. We have 4:30 to 4:45 meditation. And then after 10 minutes, the groups get divided into the male group and the female groups. And then there is a for 1 hour plus mantra meditation. Don't get frightened if you're not able to wake up. That's all right. It's not that you cannot wake up at 4:30 tomorrow. You have no hope. There is still hope. Don't become hopeless about it. Gradually, you'll come to the stage. You can wake up at 6 o'clock and do that process of mantra meditation. And the mantra meditation is very simple. Sit in a neat and clean place and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sit down at your place, chant for 15 minutes. Put it on alarm for 15 minutes. Your process of reawakening or the process of self-realization is begin by this simple step. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I can see the raised hand from Braj Mohanji. Braj Mohanji, would you like to ask your question?
Hare Krishna Mataji, it's a Gayatri Mataji here, and it's my son's name, Brajmohan. Thank you, Prabhuji. It's really wonderful session. My question is little harsh, Prabhuji. Actually, at present in this pandemic situation, when we hear that so and so devotee, he's suffering, he's positive, and we feel really for him that, or sometime maybe we try that for him that he should get recover. We pray for him, but Prabhuji, somehow the same feeling doesn't come for the other people. They are not devotee. They even never ever chanted a mantra. Or, in general, people they are affected. But somewhere the thought comes that, oh, they are not Krishna conscious, and do you understand, Prabhuji, my question? So we didn't get that feeling for them. So how means how we can think for these people in a Krishna conscious way, that we didn't get that feeling, which feeling we get for the devotees. So what it is, Prabhuji?
It's natural to have affinity or affection for your own family members, isn't it? If your child is suffering, you'll be far much more concerned about your child than when a neighbor's child is suffering. It's similar, it's just a human emotions, which is but naturally there within the devotee family and the non-devotee. So within the devotee family, there is definitely a great amount of affinity and affection for each other. And there is a great sense of feeling of empathy and concern. But that does not mean that we are hard-hearted for the non-devotees or those who are not have taken to the path of spiritual life. That is not the understanding. But you have the right to have more affection towards devotee. But that does not mean that we are or you are being harsh towards those who are not taken to the spiritual path. You may have a less affection or less concern for them. That's okay. That's not a big deal. That is up to your level of realization at this point of time. But ultimately, Bhagavad Gita says, 5th chapter, 18th verse, what is the state of a learned person, or what is the consciousness of a learned person? Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmani Gavihastani Suni Chaiva Sapakicha Pandita Samadarshana. A true learned person sees everyone with an equal vision. He does not discriminate. At your level of awareness and consciousness and awakening, if that is what is happening, that's fine. Give an analogy that within a family member, we have a greater sense of affection as compared to our neighbor's child or somebody else's well-being. That's acceptable. It's not a crime. But gradually, when we progress, when our consciousness is more awakened, we'll also feel same sense of concern and empathy for others also. Because ultimately, Mamayavamso Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, ultimately everyone is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, which means every living entity is my brother and sister. So that depends on our gradations of consciousness. So you're on the right path, you're being on the progressive path. That's okay. That's all right. This is my take on the situation.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, with your due permission, can we take few more questions? Actually, there are many more questions still remaining.
So what we can say, I guess we have taken enough questions. It's 8:37 now,
Yes,
and
Prabhuji.
many guests have probably already signed out. So all these members who still have a question, maybe they can write to you, and then we can take those questions tomorrow. So when most of the audience are there, they also get to hear it. All right.
Ji, Prabhuji.
So because time is up, so we'll end it now. For those of you who still have a question, you can write to Mother Dipasha or to the admin of your group, or you can leave it on the Zoom and we will try to cover it tomorrow. With that, thank you so much for joining for today evening. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much to entire Zoom audience as well as our YouTube audience. Thanks a lot for joining today. Our sincere apologies for the technical glitch we had at the beginning of the program. So next time we'll take care of that. Also, if you have any feedback for us, then please leave on the WhatsApp groups, or you can share it with your admins. And we request that you please stay connected with us for tomorrow's session, which is going to be very, very important. That is the art of work, which is going to be based on the Karma Yoga. So we look forward to have all of you through Zoom as well as on YouTube, so that we can continue our discussion and understand more on the art of work. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
We have updated the WhatsApp group for the morning chanting. So if you are interested, you may join that particular group. So the new link has already been shared on the WhatsApp as well as YouTube.